The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Tonight on the agenda.
The public doesn't really know some of the harms from alcohol. And people around this table do, but I wonder what percentage know about alcohol as a carcinogen, heart disease, and other problems.
Later on the agenda.
We pay a lot of attention to what's above the surface of the soil, to the above ground parts, but there's a whole world below the surface that we need to pay more attention to.
The Ontario government is moving ahead with plans to liberalize alcohol sales in the province, but questions remain about whether the risks will outweigh the benefits, and not just in terms of convenience. In fact, across the country, in every province and territory, the statistics say governments pay more to manage the social damage created by alcohol than the revenue they are generating by alcohol sales. Will the Ontario economy be boosted by increased alcohol sales? And what about the costs of a potential increase in alcohol-related harms? Let's get into that with Onindao Sen. He is a professor of economics at the University of Waterloo who has studied the economic benefits of more liberal alcohol policies in the province. He's done paid research for Spirits Canada, Loblaw, and the Ontario Convenience Stores Association. Joanne Richter is here, co-founder and owner of the Second Wedge Brewing Company. That's in Uxbridge, Ontario. Norman Giesbrecht, adjunct professor at the Dalla School of Public Health at the University of Toronto. His work has been used to create alcohol policy in Canada and is frequently cited in studies on the cost of harms created by alcohol. And Dr. Björg Borgenvag, an emergency health physician with the Sinai Health Network in Toronto with a research interest in the management of alcohol withdrawal. And it's good to have you four around our table for this timely discussion here. We want to start with a chart, and you can all watch it on the monitors up top or on the wall over there, showing what, in fact, the government takes in revenue from booze sales compared to what it costs to treat the harms that are caused by alcohol sales. Now, these are 2020 numbers. Sheldon, bring this graphic up if you would. It's detailed, so for those listening on podcast who can't see the numbers, I'm going to go through this a bit. If you take the country as a whole, the country as a whole takes in $13 billion plus from alcohol revenue, but StatsCan says the total societal cost of this is approaching $20 billion. In other words, a net deficit of $6.3 billion. Let's go province by province. In Quebec, $2.8 billion in revenue, $3.2 billion in the cost of alcohol sales, therefore a $430 million deficit. In Ontario, more than $5 billion in government revenue by selling booze, but $7 billion plus in the costs of dealing with the after effects. That's $2 billion in the whole. And Saskatchewan, $300 million plus in the whole. Alberta, $1.8 billion plus in the whole. British Columbia, nearly $1 billion in the whole, dealing with all of these things. Okay, Onindao, let's start with you. Could you explain how, just give us some more detail on whether it makes sense to be as indebted to booze sales given the costs associated with it? What's your view?
Sure. I think that, this is a great way to start the conversation. I think what we're trying to do is trying to come up with a welfare function for society. The government has to raise revenue. But when we look at costs, it's just not the cost of running the operation, but it's also the social costs. In economics, we call it negative externalities to health and so on and so forth. I think the way to think about it is that it's a layered approach. Like the first point is that how do we make alcohol available in society, right?
And they've made an announcement about that in the last couple of weeks. They're liberalizing sales.
They're liberalizing sales, and this is a continuation of policies which began in 2015.
Yes.
Right? And so you want to ask yourself that, are we doing that efficiently, right? That's the first point. Because we want to get to a point that when you look at net revenue, that sort of balances the harm. There's always going to be harm with alcohol consumption. And what I've studied in my research is the differences across provinces. So when you look at Alberta, on a per capita basis, they make much more in alcohol sales than Ontario and other provinces. And the reason is that because they don't have administrative expenses. It's about $30 million, $67 million or something. And the reason is that because they don't manage their outlets, unlike what we have in Ontario. In Ontario,
it's a privatized system out there.
it's a privatized system. And in Ontario, we have the government running the LCBO and the outlets, and that's about 1.9 or $2 billion.
Yep.
So we're ending up with a net income of $2.5 billion. So that's more than the net income we have in Alberta. But on a per capita basis, Alberta is much more. So now the point being, what I'm trying to get at is that this perception among the population that if you have deregulation, it actually results in lower net income. That's not true. That's not necessarily true.
All right, let me go to Norman with a follow-up here, and that is, can you give us a little bit more detail? When those numbers say that it actually costs society more to sell booze than the taxation revenue realized by selling booze, what does that refer to?
That refers to, a number of things. It refers to a whole range of health costs, both emergency room and inpatient treatment, doctors' costs and staff costs. It also refers to law enforcement costs, justice system costs, policing costs. It refers to workplace disruptions and costs related to that. There's about a list of 20 or 30 categories that the team has examined with regard to the provinces and the territories.
That many categories?
Yeah, a lot of categories. And the other thing I would like to mention is that there's been recent research published this year indicating that the gap between the revenue and the costs is getting bigger. So it is since 2007, I believe, it went from it's gone up by 122% to 2020. 2020 is the last year they did the calculation.
Okay, let's ask our director, Sheldon Osman. I'm in the middle of page 2. Can we bring up that next chart as well? This is a chart breaking down how much alcohol costs Canadian society when compared to other substances. So Sheldon, let's bring that up. And if you look at the comparisons between what it costs us in healthcare, lost productivity, criminal justice, others, you've got alcohol versus tobacco versus opioids versus cocaine versus cannabis. And again, for those listening on podcast, I will describe the tallest bar on that bar graph belongs to alcohol. Nearly $20 billion that it costs us compared to tobacco, which is about half that, opioids less, cocaine less, and cannabis the least. Bug, let me get you in on this now. What are the most common alcohol-related injuries that you would see in Emerge at Sinai?
Alcohol is a ubiquitous substance, and problems related to alcohol, pardon me, are extremely common in emergency departments everywhere, not just at our hospital and not just in big cities. And the range of problems are people who are suffering from extensive alcohol use disorder, people who are homeless, people who've lost their jobs, lost their families, lost their homes, people who've gotten intoxicated and got in fights, people who've gotten intoxicated and fell down and hurt themselves. It's a thread that's woven between the fabric of emergency medicine thoroughly, and it's an extraordinarily common issue that we deal with.
Okay, Joanne, you're in the business.
I am in the business.
How do you react to all these numbers?
Oh, there's no doubt, absolutely, there's a societal cost. All I can say from my perspective as the owner of a small craft brewery is that we sit on the front lines of responsible alcohol sales. All of us small breweries have our retail stores, and most of us have our tap rooms where we are wholly invested in making sure that we don't overserve or serve to minors, or we are the caretakers at our very local level. And to be honest, I think I'm just happy that we're able to play that small part. And you'd find that most of our craft breweries are taking the laws very, very seriously.
You're a responsible player in the field.
We are. We try to follow the rules, and we understand how dangerous it can be, and that's why we focus on flavor. We focus on quality over quantity. That is just what we're all about.
So what is your view on the announcement that Premier Ford made a couple of weeks ago saying he wants to liberalize beer sales in the province What does that represent in terms of your sector, your slice of the pie?
Right. It gives us so many more doors to knock on. So for us, it's great news. I fully understand all of the cautions, but as far as us as a small business, it allows us to literally go door to door. We compete. We're a small brewery. We're located in a small town. We don't have big buckets of money to compete, but what we do have is we compete on our quality and on the quality of our relationships as well as our beer. So many more small players for us to work with means we have more opportunities to compete for shelf space.
Norman, here's the thing. People have demonstrated in public opinion polling over the years that they actually want more liberalized beer and wine sales in the province. And obviously, Premier Ford is spending potentially anywhere from $225 million to as high as $1 billion to end that master framework agreement with the brewers in order to bring this forward by just a year. He thinks it's that much of a vote winner. So how do you balance all of that with the harms that have been described in the charts that we've seen?
Well, I think the public doesn't really know some of the harms from alcohol. And people around this table do, but I wonder what percentage know about alcohol as a carcinogen, heart disease, and other problems. So I think that if the public is not fully informed of the harms, then I'm not sure if they can make the right decision with regard to how much they should drink and how little they should drink. The other thing is, I'm wondering if the system couldn't be fixed to address the things that Joanne raised without having a 300% increase in the number of outlets.
What do you mean a fix? What fix?
Well, I mean, maybe there's a way they could make more space for craft brewers on the shelves. Maybe they could, other changes. I'm not in the business, so I'd be interested to hear, what's possible. A 300% increase in the number of outlets is the biggest change in alcohol policy in decades in Canada. And would put Ontario ahead of Newfoundland on a per capita basis.
What do you think the impact of that much liberalizing of booze sales in the province will have?
To be honest, Steve, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not convinced it's really going to have much of an impact at all. I think people who consume beverage alcohol are going to continue to do so, and the majority of people who do are going to, maintain control over that. The problem is there's a small portion of people who drink regularly who develop problems. It's hard to predict how that number will grow, but I would say that people who are going to buy alcohol are going to go and buy it at the corner store, or they're going to go to the beer store, they're going to go to the liquor store. I think it's just going to be more convenient to be.
That was my question, Joanne. I mean, the fact is, whatever our population is now, 15, 16 million people can only drink collectively so much.
Exactly.
And they may have more places to buy it, but are they necessarily going to drink more because there are more places that they can buy it?
Yeah, I don't honestly think so. We've had grocery stores opened up, quite a few more retail locations in the last several years. Sales of craft beer boomed in the 10 years ago. They were booming, up until before the pandemic, and then things have gone fairly flat. I don't know that we're going to see the market expand. I think it just gives smaller players a little bit more opportunity to compete within the space. I don't know that the extra availability is just more stores. That doesn't necessarily mean a great big huge increase in alcohol consumption.
What does your research show?
I agree with that opinion. I published a paper in the Canadian Journal of Criminology and Criminal Justice, and I looked at differences in provinces and tried to correlate that with increases in per capita alcohol sales, and there wasn't any statistically significant relationship. I think that when the key point out here is not just access, but the cost, right?
Cost of what?
The cost of alcohol. So there are two layers to cost. The cost of actually driving and accessing the product, and also the cost of paying for the product. And sure, with more expansion, the cost of traveling to get your product goes down, but the key point is, what are the prices post this experiment we're going for? If the prices don't drop significantly, and we retain the minimum price regulations, you're not going to see a significant drop in prices. So I don't see, there's going to be switching around from one store to another. but will there be a significant increase in sales? I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Sean.
In fact, the price ceiling, there will now apparently be an opportunity for the individual retailers to set their own pricing, which they have not been able to do to date. It's been LCBO, grocery, and brewery retail stores have uniform pricing. So I believe the idea behind the convenience stores having that opportunity is that they can set the prices higher. It is a convenience to be able to go somewhere a little closer by, so those prices might actually go higher in those stores than consumers are used to, which again can help control overconsumption, hopefully.
Norman.
A couple of points. The World Health Organization has indicated the two best buys to control harm from alcohol are pricing and physical availability, number of outlets. In Ontario, in 3 provinces, there's research on what happened when you make alcohol more available. In British Columbia, there's an increase in morbidity and mortality. In Alberta, increase in suicides. In Ontario, when the corner stores, when the supermarkets were allowed to sell alcohol, there was an increase in ER admissions for alcohol, 24,000 more admissions in the 2 years following the change.
And you would draw a straight line between those two things. There's no question that that's the reason for it?
Well, the researcher, Daniel Myron, looked at the admissions prior to the change, and they looked at the admissions 2 years after the change, and he found a big increase. The international research is very strong on this, that if you increase the availability of alcohol, you're likely to have increase in hospital admissions, violence, and many other problems from alcohol.
Bug, is that your experience?
It's hard to say. I can say that problems related to alcohol have gone up. They've gone up, it feels like a lot since the pandemic started. They've gone up over the almost 30 years that I've been practicing emergency medicine.
Okay, let me jump in on that. But I guess what I need to know is, have the problems gone up because we can buy booze at more places, or because we needed to drown our sorrows during COVID, and therefore it went up for that reason?
I think it's because people were stuck at home and people didn't have to go anywhere, and having a beer on an afternoon seemed like a good idea, or a drink or a glass of wine. I don't want to pick on the beer brewers. But truthfully, at my place in the picture, it's hard for me to say what may be factors that are, affecting that. I guess, Ontario is one place that has extremely good provincial health data through ICE at the Institute of Clinical and Value of Sciences. So I think we'll get the answer soon enough what happens.
Onenda.
Norman's correct in the research he cited, absolutely. But there is a paper by Schwartz in the Journal of Studies on Drugs and Alcohol. What they did is that they exploited the Ontario experiment. They basically got survey data which looked at drinking patterns in the population and correlated it to whether there was a grocery store which suddenly started stocking beer after 2015 over a couple of years, and they didn't find any significant correlation out there.
No significant correlation?
No, in intensity of alcohol consumption, no.
Norman, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I would, because I know that paper, and I think that's an excellent point. But there's another paper that has just been published, which found that there was an increase in alcohol-related hospital admissions following the access through the supermarkets.
Although we got an ER doc right here who says he can't be sure that the reason is liberalized sales.
I'm looking at the population level, and you're looking at your individual experience.
I'm looking in an emergency department waiting room, not a whole province. Yeah. It's hard to say.
And therefore, whose word do we take here?
They're both relevant.
They're both relevant. Okay, well, that was very diplomatically put. That's nice. All right, let's, again, Sheldon, I'm going to ask you to bring up this graphic here, bottom of page 3, because we asked, okay, here's what we did. We asked Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health whether or not he was consulted either before or during the government's plan to deregulate booze sales in the province. And they didn't really want to give us an answer. They referred us to the Provincial Ministry of Health, who I guess gets to speak for the government now as opposed to the Medical Officer of Health. And here is what the Ministry of Health had to say. Let's bring these comments up. They say alcohol is one of Canada's most regulated products, and there are a number of provincial regulations and programs already in place to ensure the safe and responsible sale and consumption of alcohol, including, and here's their list, standard hours of sale, minimum drinking age, minimum retail pricing requirements, requirements for warning signs, mandatory staff training that would be required for all new retailers, rigorous standards for licensing and enforcement through the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. And their concluding comment is, our government is also investing an additional $10 million to support social responsibility and public health efforts to ensure alcohol continues to be sold and consumed safely in the expanded marketplace. That funding is on top of the additional nearly $400 million announced in this year's budget, building on the existing historic investment of $3.8 billion over 10 years for mental health and addiction services. Okay, so Norman, in your experience, how much consultation goes on between governments and professionals such as yourself or the medical officer of health or others before policy is in fact made?
An excellent question, and I don't know the answer. I'll tell you why. Because the consultation that the Premier referred to was consultation with the industry. His statements have made no reference to consultation with public health experts.
Do you think there should have been if there wasn't?
Yes, I think there always should be.
But you don't know that there wasn't?
I can't say where there was, but I do know that he was very dismissive about the recommendations by the Chief Medical Officer of
Who's
Health.
the he?
The Premier.
Premier Ford.
Yes.
Was dismissive of, yes, when the 2 drinks per week came out.
No, I'm talking about the recommendations by the report by the Chief Medical Officer of Health in April. There are recommendations, I think there are recommendations referring to different strategies.
And you're saying the Premier was dismissive of those
That's my interpretation.
healthcare
That's
concerns?
my personal interpretation.
You're nodding, but do you agree?
I can't comment. I haven't studied that aspect.
Okay.
But I would say that this list is only half the list. They didn't talk about mitigation strategies they could put into place once this change happens.
Such as what?
There's a whole list of them they can do. They could put warning labels on alcohol containers. They could give the municipalities a chance to decide. Municipalities could say, we've got 7 liquor stores and 4 beer stores and 8 wine shops. Thank you, we're good. We don't need to have more outlets.
Let me put that issue of labels. Would you want labels on your product saying, you drink in excess and it's bad for your health?
I mean, for us, beer is an object that you're supposed to enjoy with a meal. It's supposed to be pleasurable. You're supposed to enjoy it in moderation.
So it's a downer.
It's a bit of a downer, but if somebody says you're going to have to slap those labels on, fine, we'll do it. Whatever helps keep our industry afloat, basically. But it is a bit of a downer when you think of it. I mean, the idea of it is small amounts of very flavorful, creatively crafted liquid.
Do you have a view on whether warning labels on booze is a good idea?
We see people who regularly drink hand sanitizer and non-beverage alcohol. It's not clear to me that it's going to make a big difference. I don't know. I'm not an expert, and I would defer to Norm on specifics about whether warning labels really has an impact on these kinds of things. But
there was a very excellent study done in Yukon a few years ago, and they compared Yukon to the Northwest Territories, and they had warning labels on the bottles in Yukon that refer to alcohol as a carcinogen and other problems. Very large labels, very colorful labels. And they also had information on the number of standard drinks in the bottle. Yeah. And that had an impact on people's awareness of risks, awareness of alcohol problems, awareness of good policies.
At 8:22 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time Tuesday, Environment Canada has updated a tornado warning for far northwestern and northwestern Ontario. Extra care and attention should be exercised. The following localities are included in the warning: Pickle Lake, Cat Lake, Sioux Lookout and Eastern Lac Seul. Environment Canada meteorologists are tracking a severe thunderstorm that is possibly producing a tornado. Damaging winds, large hail and locally intense rainfall are also possible. Take cover immediately if threatening weather approaches. Please consult local media for more information.
À 20h22 heure avancée de l'Est le mardi, Environnement Canada a mis à jour une alerte de tornade pour l'extrême nord-ouest et le nord-ouest de l'Ontario. Une attention et des précautions additionnelles devraient être exercées. Les localités suivantes sont incluses à l'alerte. Pic-le-Lac, Calac, Sioulou et Lac de l'Est. Les météorologues d'Environnement Canada surveillent un orage violent produisant possiblement une tornade. Des vents destructeurs, de la grosse grêle et de la pluie intense par endroits sont aussi possibles. Mettez-vous immédiatement à l'abri si un phénomène météorologique menaçant s'approche. Veuillez consulter les médias locaux pour plus d'informations.
The government gave the brewers a private retail monopoly, right? And that's an artifact of successful lobbying, very successful lobbying. So my point being is that when you have the beer store, it is a really good mechanism in order to control prices, in order to make sure that there was an intense price competition, right? Also to make sure that your products are the ones which gain prominence, not the craft beers, right?
Yep.
But if the major multinational brewery, like, I'm going to leave you out of the equation for a second here. If the folks who are responsible for shipping the most, I don't know, tonnage, gallonage, however you describe
liters,
it. Yeah, liters. Now have to deliver to many, many, many more locations, not just their own beer stores. Does it stand to reason that that's going to increase the cost of distribution and therefore the product?
Well, not necessarily, because that's what happens in Quebec, right? So if you strip away, and this is part of my research, if you strip away the taxes and you're left with the prices, the net prices, back a few years ago, when I did my research on pre-COVID prices, the prices in Quebec of major products, the Coors Molson, were still lower in Quebec relative to the LCBO, despite the brewers having to incur all these transportation and logistical costs.
So they're sensitive to the marketplace still.
Absolutely.
They are. Okay. Do you have a view on what may happen to the beer store now that this liberalization is coming into effect?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, they have options that I'm obviously not sitting in their meetings, but I know that they have a distribution network of their own. So, they handle logistics for other breweries delivering across Ontario. So perhaps they would invest there, but I can't really say.
Were you ever allowed to sell your stuff in the beer store?
We were allowed, but we did not.
How come?
It's owned by conglomerates that have a vested interest they have a vested interest against the success of craft breweries.
Yeah, well,
so we just chose, wonderful people working there across this province. I love the recycling program, but we just didn't want to collaborate with these conglomerate breweries that have all the power.
What about the notion of getting your product into the LCBO or into corner stores or supermarkets?
Well, we do have our products in the LCBO and grocery, and we sell to LCBO convenience outlets up in our area. We're an hour northeast of Toronto.
Uxbridge.
In Uxbridge, yes. So up in our area, we have already, what they used to call outlet stores. So we're used to going to, selling to individual stores, driving up with our own van and pulling up our dolly to the back door and unloading our own product. So that's something that we already have going. And we are in the LCBO. The LCBO is a much more controlled retail environment, and it often really benefits the companies with the most money. It is great for craft beer. It's been a great place for us to sell, but it does limit what we can do because the shelf space is often purchased, and there's a very long 7-month process to get one product listed. It's a rather large and weighty process. My understanding is that now with the individual convenience stores, we will be able to sell any of our products as long as they meet all of the requirements. That when we're ready, we have a beer that's available, we can go sell it now. Like that is ideal for us.
How many locations you got?
Right now?
Yeah.
We're in 50 to 75 LCBO stores. So we're still fairly small distribution, but a lot of it is because you just have to be on the phone and you have to be visiting all the stores and everything.
And you make it all in the one place in Uxbridge?
We do.
You don't have a second location for manufacturing?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Just
Can you do
place.
that now, or will you want to do that now?
You never say never. At the moment, we're a very community-focused place, and we have enough room to do a little bit more expansion on our own property that we rent in Uxbridge. we'd love to grow to the point where we could, potentially open a second location. We're growing in a fairly modest way, but again, because things have been fairly flat since COVID times in the market, growth is kind of how you sustain at this point. Like the only way to actually survive is to be able to kind of expand our market a little bit.
Well, let me ask Anandao about that. Again, based on your research, your experience, when this kind of liberalization takes place in other provinces, for example, is it a boon for the craft business?
Absolutely. You look at the experience of Alberta, you look at the experience of British Columbia, there's just so much. I mean, essentially it comes down to shelf space, right, and reaching the products, consumers efficiently. And so therefore I expect there to be possibly significant economic benefits to the province in terms of small distilleries and small manufacturers, craft brewers.
She's still got to be good at what she does, though. She's got to fight for a piece of the action.
That's the market.
Yeah,
exactly.
As you well know.
Yeah, and I would like to think that our beer can just stand on its own. And like I said, the quality of our beer and the quality of our relationships, we still, without big money bags, we can only do so much with the opportunity. We're going to do our very best. So it's a freer market, but I'm really happy that Ontario Craft Brewers, of which we're a member, has pushed hard for 20% shelf space of the beer on the convenience store shelves has to be Ontario craft beer. So that
favors you.
It does favor us, and I think we could stand on our own, but just having the big breweries have had an advantage for so many years. It's nice to have finally a little bit of an advantage for the little guys. Yeah.
All right. Again, I'm going to circle back to where we started here. I appreciate that some of you here believe that the cost of liberalizing beer sales isn't worth it because the downside is so much more significant. If that's the case, what should we do about it? I mean, we're not going to ban the sale of alcohol in the province of Ontario in order to avoid all of the potential negative consequences. So what do we do? You.
Well, I think one thing that would be helpful to do would be to increase education around treatment for alcohol use disorders. So, people are going to continue to drink, as you say, and some people are going to get into trouble with that. What most people don't know, what most doctors, I think, are unaware of, certainly most emergency physicians, is there's very effective treatment for alcohol use disorder. We just published last month some international guidelines called GRACE 4, the Guidelines for Reasonable Appropriate Care in Emergency Departments, outlining specific treatment that we think emergency physicians should be offering people who have alcohol use disorder. Anti-craving medications is what they're called. They've been available for decades. Probably fewer than 1% of people with alcohol use disorder are ever actually prescribed those medications. They're incredibly effective. The number needed to treat in order to get to a good outcome, however you might measure that outcome, whether it's reduced heavy alcohol consumption, abstinence, or something in between, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 12 patients. So in Ontario, this is paid for by Ontario Health. It's readily available. We are trying very hard to get emergency physicians to want to participate in looking after people with alcohol use disorder in a non-judgmental way, offering treatment for people who, are willing to explore the harms that have happened to them, likely as a result of their alcohol.
How do you get more uptake on that?
It's been hard. I think doctors physicians anyways, are pretty action-oriented. They want to do something. And I think one of the problems with problematic alcohol use is people don't feel they can do anything. They feel there's a high degree of stigma associated with alcohol use disorder. Many people feel it's a moral failing. Why can't these people just drink less? From a provider's point of view, just giving somebody the telephone number for the local detox is not very satisfying. At our hospital and at other places, we've created a list, a toolkit of pre-printed prescriptions that have the correct dose with the limited use codes that will be paid for by Ontario Health. We've created sheets outlining for the patient what medication they're taking. We've created referral pathways to the rapid access addiction medicine clinics that have proliferated in the province of Ontario over the last 10 years. We've even come up with guidance for family doctors if a patient chooses to go back and see their family doctor, because family doctors don't prescribe this medication otherwise.
Norman, let me get you in here too. We're not going to ban booze sales, but what could we do to make it less expensive?
I think, first of all, the government should pause, wait till January 2026. They can save the taxpayer $225 million, if not more.
They're not going to do that, Norman.
Well,
They've already announced that they're in fact going to do the exact opposite of that.
But that's illogical.
Okay.
Secondly, and I agree with what you said, Joanne, earlier on, I think they really need to beef up the server training to make sure that there's no sales or minimum sales to youth and people who are intoxicated. Countries that have looked at this, including in Alberta and British Columbia, the private outlets do not do as good a job as the government outlets in terms of selling, preventing sales to minors or to intoxicated patrons. I think they should also give municipalities a chance to decide whether they want this or not, have the municipal decision. And thirdly, I think they could put a cap on the number of outlets per municipalities. Instead of 8,500, it may be somewhat less, but they could still have a few outlets. And last but not least, I think picking up what it was just said, to have screening and brief intervention used more widely so that people who are at the early stage of problem drinking have a way of stopping or reducing their drinking, and rather than wait until they're really into the alcohol and are going to be going into hospital for a long-term stay, which is much more expensive. So I think there's some things that could be done to mitigate some of the harms that are likely result from this change. But waiting a year would be a great idea, because they could think about the options and plan the mitigation strategies and so on. But
understood. I want 20 more seconds, control room, to ask Bug about the fact that the last time he was on this program, he mentioned that his daughter was unemployed and she gave him HE double hockey sticks for doing that. Would you care to give us an update on how your daughter's doing these days?
My lovely daughter, Natalie, is gainfully employed after losing her job in the pandemic, and she'll be very happy to hear me say on television that she's not unemployed. Thank you for that operation.
Excellent. Happy to do that. We're a full-service operation here. Anand Dowsen and Norman Giesbrecht on the right-hand side of the table, Joanne Richter and Bug Borgenvag on the other side of the table. Good to have all four of you here tonight to help us with this conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
At 8:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time Tuesday, Environment Canada has issued a tornado warning for far northwestern Ontario. Extra care and attention should be exercised in and around the following localities: Tickle Lake and Cat Lake. Environment Canada meteorologists are tracking a severe thunderstorm that is possibly producing a tornado. Damaging winds, large hail and locally intense rainfall are also possible. Take cover immediately if threatening weather approaches. Please consult local media for more information.
À 20h35 heure avancée de l'île mardi, Environnement Canada a émis une alerte de tornade pour l'extrême nord-est de l'Ontario. Une attention et des précautions additionnelles devraient être exercées près et autour des localités suivantes: Tickle Lake et Cat Lake. Les météorologues et Environnement Canada surveillent un orage viol produisant possiblement une tornade, des vents destructeurs, de la grosse grêle et de la pluie intense par endroits sont aussi possibles. Mettez-vous immédiatement à l'abri si un phénomène météorologique menaçant s'approche. Veuillez consulter les médias locaux pour plus d'informations.
I can see red-winged blackbirds and I can hear them. It's the magical sound of the wetlands, and they've come back to this place now that these wetlands have been restored.
When we first came to this land here, it looked like it was on the moon.
It was a mine. It looked like a mine. There were giant rock trucks and excavators and pile drivers, and it was like, it was a mine.
When we did that first initial ceremony, we really weren't sure what was going to happen. but we had our faith and we had our belief, and we did all those things that we have been instructed to do in the best way possible. And now we see the evident truth of those indigenous plants that are thriving. It was from that original connection with the land and stating our intention with the tobacco and the water and the songs and the prayers that we were given direction. And part of that direction was to reach out to those people who actually walked along this land, walked along the wetlands here. In this area here, we know this is Zibi Oma Aking Bemijawan, and that's talking about our rivers that meet together, bringing those clan families together and asking them for their recommendations. You know, we connected with elders, knowledge keepers, historians, young people, along with the urban indigenous groups, and from there we received direction. From there we received really important recommendations on how to revitalize this land, our wetlands. This place, we know this as Nojimawaning, where all the wetlands are on the shores. That's where the healing is. That's where our medicine roots are. That's where the plants are that we make everything that we use. And it was also in this place that huge trading would go on. And a lot of that trading had to do with the natural fibers and those sorts of things as gifts, those sorts of exchange between nations.
We pay a lot of attention to what's above the surface of the soil, to the above ground parts, but there's a whole world below the surface that we need to pay more attention to. And as we see here with this project, all it needs is a little bit, or even a lot of attention in some cases, to really bring it back to life and to allow the life within the soil to regenerate on its own.
Back in 2021, this site was a giant open pit mine. It was 10 meters deep and full of mud, and there was a portion of it that had been left exposed to the sun and the rain of the nice warm summer of 2021. And one of the site supervisors from Ellis Don one day was walking along and spied some plants that didn't quite look exactly like the weeds that you normally see on a construction site. Paul Zizek called botanists and called the landscape architects, and we called the Conservation Authority, and we all came and took a look at the plants. And it turned out that they were actually wetland plants growing in the middle of an excavation. And this excavation was about 7 meters below the surface of where a building had stood on Commissioner Street. So we were way down deep. And because this area was once the largest wetland on Lake Ontario, we thought maybe these were some of the plants that had sprouted. And in fact, it turns out that these seeds had been underground for 100 years. And when left exposed to the sun and the rain, started to grow. 100 years later, they just sat there waiting under all of that weight, under all of the Portland's infrastructure, under all of the tank farms and the munitions factories, and they started to grow.
This was a very important wetland for the Great Lakes region, and it was one of the largest peat wetlands in all of the Great Lakes. Peat is compressed types of wetland plants that builds up over time. And there are peat bogs all across the north, spanning from down here in this region, going all the way up into the boreal. It's a very specialized ecosystem, and it's something that you just can't see here in Toronto anymore. It holds a lot of carbon, so it's very important for carbon balance globally to be preserving and paying attention to peat ecosystems. It was in that type of peat where a lot of the seeds were still preserved. We took some back to the lab. We germinated as many as we could, again, back in the greenhouses to see what more would come up if we continue to water it and look after it. Then we looked at the soil under a microscope and picked out and carefully identified as much of the pollen as we could, because the pollen in many cases can be well preserved as well. So there was an entire pollen bank, which was the story of what was here at least 100, if not hundreds of years before. We were able to identify with expertise from Professor at Trent, native or indigenous cattails. We had European species of cattails that we found, and we also found a hybrid. It's looking like many of the material that we saw sprouting here is in fact at least 100, if not 100 and more years old.
Right now we're standing in what once was the largest freshwater marsh in the Great Lakes system. And 100 years ago or so, the Toronto Harbour Commission filled the whole area in the hopes of developing out a large port on Lake Ontario. And as a part of that process, they channelized the Don River, which used to flow into the marsh. And now the Don River takes a hard right into the Keating Channel. The urbanization of the watershed as well has left the water with less places to go, and so when we get a large storm event, it rushes into the river. And right now there are 290 hectares of land which are at risk of flooding in a major storm event. So the work that we're doing on the Portlands is to flood protect this area by adding a new pathway for the water to come down the river in a flood and actually over top of this bank and out into the ship channel in a major flood event, which relieves that pressure, flood protects some parts of South Leslieville, Riverdale, and downtown Toronto from a major flood event. The materials that we're using are all inspired by nature. So there are a lot of bioengineering techniques that we've used to construct the river. Because this area was filled and over time industrial uses came in and they were heavily impacting the soils. There were some oil storage tanks that were here, munitions manufacturing, which have left a legacy of contamination in the area. And so we've had to excavate out over 1.4 million cubic meters of soil. Much of that is contaminated soil, and we've treated it on site. We've had to stockpile some of it, and some of it, the most contaminated of the material, has been taken off site to safe storage locations. That material makes room for the river. The river is constructed between secant pile walls, which are massive concrete walls that extend down to bedrock. In some locations, that's over 40 or 50 meters down below, which creates a large sort of bathtub area, and it separates out the contaminated material from the clean material that we have within the river valley. After we excavated the river, we then began to build it up with clean fill, clean materials, imported soils. So there's resiliency that's built into all of the finishes here. That was considered when the landscape architects were designing the park. They considered the materials that they would use for the trails. The plant species that we have here were all selected to be resilient and to establish themselves in the river valley. We've planted now over 2 million herbaceous plants, 77,000 shrubs, and over 5,000 trees. So again, we're taking our cues from nature to establish an ecological habitat. The form of the river valley and the habitat that we're creating is based on precedent sites that have been studied by the design team throughout the process, looking at the Second Marsh in Oshawa or the Humber River, for example, to really watch and observe how those habitats function and then try to recreate that type of habitat here on the Don River. In the design of Cherry Street and Commissioner Street, we've put green infrastructure and pedestrian spaces first in terms of the space that we've given over within the road right-of-way. So over 25% of those streets are for plantings and bioswales and places where stormwater can go, and that's kept on the landscape for irrigation of the trees that are planted within the boulevards as well. Making sure that we have 25% of the space given over to the roads also helps with things like urban heat island effect, which is another thing that is becoming more intense with climate change. And so when we add trees and green space to our cityscapes and to our urban grid, that improves livability for everyone that lives within the city as well.
Soil is alive, and we have to pay attention to it. It's fundamental to everything that we do above the soil. So it's really foundational, and what we've been doing here is really paying attention to soil and earth first, and then moving forward from there. And as we see, everything else can follow.
This project is for me, I think, about connecting people. It's connecting the river back to the lake. It's connecting landscapes and ecology, but it's also connecting people to place and people to each other. There are a lot of strong relationships that have been built throughout this process, which is an 8-year detailed design process. There have been a lot of stakeholder and community engagement meetings and exercises, and people from all different disciplines that work on the project. And I think what's really special about this place is that it's nature right in downtown Toronto that people will be able to be close to, that will be able to come and spend time with and be in relationship with on a really regular basis.
There are muskrats, there are beavers, there are bald eagles and red-tailed hawks, and there are fish in the river. And we're building this for them in downtown Toronto, and it's so amazing.
And I think about our intention. What we start to see unfold is a creation story of its own. How people, how teams are helping this unfolding of the natural environment. We see the Wajash, you mentioned, Nigig, all of these animals, they're listening. They're already here looking for, where's my home going to be?
It's alive already. There are coyotes. There are geese. There are too many geese. They're eating all of our plants. Where are the geese? Even before it opens, even before we're done, everybody wants to come and live here.
Welcome to Squish,
which is swish with Q in it, so like a queer swish. Also, it's like squishy, so.
It's a drop-in basketball night for Toronto's queer, non-binary, trans community and their allies, and really anyone who hasn't felt comfortable in a traditional basketball setting.
It's non-competitive, we don't keep score, there's no rules, it's just all about like silliness and just like having the best time.
You're gonna see double dribbles, you're gonna see travels, you're gonna see fouls, you're gonna see confusion. You might see somebody score on their own net, but it's all part of it. There's no rules.
Circle time. Welcome to Squish.
Players break out into teams and play 3 games throughout the night.
1, 2, 3.
Squish got its start in 2015, and while the number of players taking part has grown, the drop-in night's mission has remained constant.
I think the idea is that we are here to play collectively, and so it doesn't matter what your skill set is, you're gonna kind of like find a way to mesh with everyone else on your team. I played competitive sports as a kid, and it's really stressful, and it always gave me a lot of anxiety. And coming to Squish, I get to kind of like undo that and just have a lot of fun and still play, and still get baskets and stuff. But the end goal is different. Like, the goal for me here isn't for me to get every shot in. It's for me to support my team in everyone having the best time, and for everyone to be smiling from ear to ear. I hear of people who haven't played for the last 10 years, who have transitioned and, haven't played since transitioning, and can feel comfortable here, can feel like they can be themselves.
Queer sports leagues have been popping up across Ontario over the years. It's become an important third space for communities that have historically been on the sidelines.
You have home, you have work, but you need somewhere where you can bounce your idea, just de-stress, decompress, grow as a person, or learn things about people that are different from you, and this is the perfect third space, because I've met the widest variety of people here. Coming to Squish, it was by the recommendation of my friend, but I had not come out of the closet at that point. I was just perusing sports, joining groups. Oh, I'm just going to come play basketball. But that was my way into actually honestly confronting my sexuality. In fact, Squish is where I kind of found a family to come out to and understand myself in that context.
This season, the drop-in night has been held at Central Technical School in Toronto. To cover permit costs, Squish uses a pay-what-you-can model to further reduce barriers for players. This year, however, Squish got a helping hand from Canada's lone NBA team, the Toronto Raptors.
They both invited Squish to Pride Night, which was amazing, to go to a Raptors game where everyone was queer or queer allied, and just knowing that that's what the space was for.
The Raptors support is also going to pay for Squish's entire permit for next season, and any contributions collected on top of that will be put back into the community. And it's precisely that sense of community that keeps people coming back week after week.
It's been something really special about this year. New people are coming all the time, and I think that's exactly what the space was supposed to be like. That was what we envisioned, and so to see all of that come to fruition is just so beautiful.
Okay, everyone, try to squish in!
Here's a look at something we're working on.
So the book that I wrote, it's entitled Learning to Live, and it details the loss of my mom and dad to mental health, and it also details a story of hope.
That's coming up on the agenda.